And again, I'll remind you, kindly share. Knowledge shared is usually enriching the society. Don't be selfish to stay with your own knowledge. It won't help you. So once you get the information, you share. Okay, so now I think I still have about 2 minutes. Let's allow those who are late in joining to come in.
Excuse me, madam, I actually have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the nervous system. Is there a way?
Oops. Sorry, I muted you accidentally. Can you unmute yourself, please?
I have, thank you.
Okay, I actually wanted to lower your hand and then I muted you. So what are you asking about the nervous system?
Is there a way it is involved in the immune system? Because we have the glial cells in the nervous tissue, and I feel like they're kind of involved in the immune system.
Which cells? You say we have which cells in the immune system?
In the nervous system, in the nervous tissue,
Yeah.
other than the neurons, we have the glial. I don't know the actual pronunciation.
Oh, the glial cells, yeah?
Yeah. Is there a way that they are linked to the immune system?
Okay, so now today's topic, you can see what I have not. Have I shared? Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
So you can see the slide that I have talking about the integration between the systems. The systems don't work in isolation. There is always an overlap. There is always an overlap. If you are talking about the digestive system, you find that intertwined with the digestive system, there is the circulatory system. They cannot work separately. Within the digestive system, we also have some immune cells which participate in an immune response. So they are part of the immune system. If you go now to what you're talking about, the nervous system. Intertwined with the nervous system, we also have the circulatory system, and we also have the immune response. So they work together. You cannot completely separate one system from the other. So today's topic, as I said, you can see it is integration between the systems. They don't work separately. Anastasia, you've just thrown up your hand.
I have a question too.
Yes.
Yeah. When I was going through the muscular system, I found a function that it maintains the body temperature. How?
Okay. Axila, you have a question or you forgot to lower your hand? Axila Mugeni.
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. So you're asking about muscular and stem there. And what about Alice, Anyim?
I wanted to answer a question on how the
Great.
muscular.
Go ahead.
Okay, so in the muscular system, we have the skeletal muscles, which enable you to move. So as these muscles are contracting, heat is produced. So it contributes to your body temperature. That's something of the sort. I am done.
Okay, and Anita?
I would also like to give my contribution on that.
Yes.
How the muscular system maintains the body temperature. because like sometimes you find that glycogen is stored in those muscle cells. During the process of glycolysis, glycogen is converted to glucose. Like during the process of glycolysis, we are aiming at forming energy for movement. Now this ATP, when ATP is being produced, it is not produced alone. It is produced with heat. Now this heat that is being produced, it is helping in maintaining the body temperature. So in that process, when contraction and relaxation are occurring, in that process also glycolysis is taking place, producing ATP and heat, thus maintaining the body temperature.
Thank you. I think, Yesh Patel, you also have something to add or a question?
Yeah, I had something in regards to how also the body is maintaining the temperature.
Yes.
Back in high school, in A levels, we were taught that the body has a thermoregulatory center in the hypothalamus that's responsible for controlling the body temperature. So I think that's my understanding of the thermoregulatory center and its relation with controlling body temperature.
Okay. Yeah. So all those things are actually tied up together. Patel, you are very correct that the hypothalamus has the thermoregulatory center. The problem is within the hypothalamus, it cannot generate the temperature itself. What the center will do, it will send information to all those parts of the body which are responsible for generating heat. One of them being the liver and the other one being the muscles. Now, the main question I understood from our colleague here was that she cannot understand if the muscles are contributing to temperature. How are they doing it? And I think the responses were very nice because for every one molecule of ATP, you require, because you know what happens is that when you have, I'll use a pen here. So when you're generating, when you're burning the fuel, every time you're going to join ATP, you are going to go have a phosphate to which you'll add an adenosine. Adenosine is the adenine sugar plus sugar, the adenine base plus sugar. So what you do is you add a phosphate group so that it becomes a monophosphate. For that phosphate to be added, it requires energy. You are bringing two separate molecules together and you are forcing them to stick to each other. You need energy to do that. Then for you to add a second phosphate, you need to generate or to use up more energy to do that. And to generate a third one, you require a lot of energy. That's why the ATP, since it has 3 phosphate groups, it has possibility of breaking these phosphates and releasing that energy. Breaking this phosphate and releasing that energy. Now, during muscular contraction, this ATP is being utilized. It's being taken all the time. And now all this ATP is releasing energy. For the muscle contraction to take place, it will require just a little amount of energy, and we have some excess that is being released. Now that excess is being lost as heat. Now the other thing is somebody mentioned that when you're burning up fuel, when you're generating these molecules, there is always some excess heat that is being lost. So when you are burning the fuel itself, you are generating these molecules, but because of that excess heat, you are using up oxygen and all that, but all the energy is not being captured in the ATP. So some of them are being lost as senseless, or what we usually call senseless loss. But it is not senseless because it is lost as heat. Now you can imagine in the muscles, it's not one cell. There are so many which are doing the same thing at the same time. They are burning the fuel, so you have excess heat that is being lost. Then they are also breaking up the ATPs, and you also have some excess heat. So you end up seeing that in the course of contracting and relaxing muscles, the muscles are generating heat, and therefore they are utilized when the body temperature falls down below a certain level. then you have to contract your muscles and generate that excess heat. Are we okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, another question before I go to the next ones. I'm glad that you are going through your notes. Like I told you, the slides, I did not give them in class in details what we need to do, because I expect you to read those slides and ask questions. Yes, Samuel?
Yes, my question is about when you were introducing to us these major systems of the body, you ever said that when the cell is not excited, usually inside of it, there are negative ions, while outside of it, there are positive ions. What can we take as the reason for that? Thank you.
Okay. Marie?
Yes, I want to answer. I want to try to answer him.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that the charges are due to the ions inside, difference in ions inside and the outside the cell. Like as in the inside the cell, there are many chloride ions, and outside there are many potassium ions. So as the ions are like positively charged, the chloride are negatively charged, they might contribute to the negative charge inside the cell, and the potassium, which is outside, will contribute to the positive outside the cell. And they are not only the ions. I was just specifying some of them because outside the cell also they are inside the cell. There are also the magnesium, if I can recall well. Yeah, I mean, like the difference in the ions inside and outside the cell is what brings about the negative and positive charges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that attempt. It's a very good answer, but you'll find that when you're looking inside the cell, there is a lot of things that are coming into play, so that at rest, when that cell is at rest and you are at equilibrium, it is as a result of so many events that are happening. Now, in my introduction, because that was just an overview, an overview statement that I gave, you find that I simplified it so much. And I just gave you the conclusion that at rest, there is an equal distribution of these ions, which I think is what Patience was trying to explain. Now, because each ion is carrying a charge and they are not equally distributed inside and outside the cell, so when you add up all the charges, you find that the charges immediately inside the membrane will be different from outside. And the final settlement charge I gave you is that the inside is usually negative. Your take-home statement will be that inside a cell, when it is at rest, it's usually negative. Outside the cell, it's usually positive. So, and this is just the ions immediately surrounding the cell membrane. So don't go into the solution itself. We're just looking at just the charge inside and outside the membrane. There is that unequal distribution, and we'll come to look at the process that leads to that later. It's a whole lecture. Actually, it's more than one lecture for me to explain that. So I will just let you know that it is due to unequal distribution of ions leading to that unequal distribution of the charge. Now, at one time, some of these cells, the ones that we said are excitable, who can remember the excitable cells? One of them? Yes, Samuel?
Muscle cells.
Muscle, and the other one, somebody can just say the neurocells.
Cells.
So those ones, their membrane, that membrane is very, very unstable. So you can easily allow ions to pass through, as compared to others that are more stable. They won't allow ions to easily pass through them. So the ones that are not able to penetrate or to allow the passage of ions, we say that they have a very long, I would say, is it a high threshold? They take long to stimulate. These ones with a very unstable membrane means that if you do something to them slightly, they'll allow ions to pass through. When the ions pass through, you change the membrane charge. When you change the membrane charge of a cell, then you say it is stimulated. Then in that case, you find it is easier. It's very easy to stimulate muscle cells and neural cells. And we'll come to that later. It's a whole topic, don't worry. You'll understand it sooner than later. So any other question before I go to today's lecture? So we have looked at, you have seen what the nervous system does. I have just mentioned that it has cells that are very unstable. It was very nice of somebody who told us that we don't have only those unstable cells that we call the neurons. Those with an unstable membrane are the ones that are easily excitable, and they are the neurons. But in the nervous system, you find that there's another component of cells which are not stimulated. These cells that are not easily stimulated are what we call the support cells. They are the glial cells. They have different functions. Some of them are structural. Others are going to nourish the cells that are being stimulated. So they will nourish, they will give structure. Some of them will form what we call a myelin sheath. And some of them, the ones that our friend just mentioned, they act like part of the immune system. So they are going to be like macrophages. When there's something wrong, when they see toxins, when they see microbes, they'll go and engulf them and try and clean around where the neuron cells are, because the neurons are very, very sensitive to their environment. So you find there are those cells, we call them the microglia, they are the ones which act like scavengers. They keep the nervous system clean. There are those that will form the myelin sheath, and they help in the functioning of the nerve cells itself, so that when there is movement, when you're transmitting an impulse, these glial cells, or rather these the ones that form the myelin sheath, they usually help. They do not themselves become stimulated, but they help in speeding up the transmission. Then we have those that will separate the excitable cells from the non-excitable ones. And these can either be in the brain or within the ventricles. But anyway, I'm going into so much details of it. But we find that there are some epithelial cells which are really specialized within the nervous system. So in one side, you're going to find what we call the cerebrospinal fluid. And then on the other side, you're going to find the tissues which form the membranes and the blood vessels and everything. So the ones that are separating in the brain and in the spinal cord, this cerebrospinal fluid from the others, those are again what we call support cells or glial cells. We'll come to learn about that later, but I think they were mentioned in the slides. So we have encountered those microglia which act like scavengers, which are acting like part of the immune cells. Then we have the ones which separate the blood system from the other one. Those are also support cells. So I'm just giving you components of the nervous system. So what is so important about the nervous system that is allowing it, or it is enabling it to maintain homeostasis? So we need to understand what is homeostasis. Homeostasis is the internal environment. So how is this nervous system contributing towards maintaining the internal environment? So we are going to see all those cells that I was talking about. They will have a role in maintaining stability of the inside. And I'll come to touch on that later. Yes, Sebata.
Okay, thank you. I had a question.
Yes.
So I read something that nerve cells, if they are destroyed, like they don't like grow back or something like that, right? So my question was, is it possible like to use the stem cells to regenerate like nerve cells? Because some people, they get damaged, or let's say your spinal cord gets damaged. Is there not a way to kind of like fix that, maybe using stem cells?
That's a very nice question, because they have really tried to regenerate tissues using stem cells. The problem with the nervous cells or the neural cells. There's somebody is trying to join. Just give me a minute. Somebody is lost. Okay, I think I might as well mention something about the classroom. I'll answer your question, don't worry. Now, some people are trying to join the class and they are not able to, because they are launching the Zoom and trying to just add the password and the link. Now, what happened is that I generated this meeting using the Blackboard link. So I actually opened my Blackboard, and using the USIU Zoom link, that's where I generated the class meetings. So if you just try to log in direct using Zoom, at times it will refuse. Even me, when I try to start the meeting, it refuses. So you have to open Blackboard, and then you look for the link and try and do it. At times it will allow you outside Blackboard, at times it will refuse. So when you see it has refused, kindly try to open your Blackboard and join through there, because some people are really having a challenge. Then this other thing I need to mention, some people joined late after I gave my introduction. In my introduction class, I gave the reason why I don't want my credentials put on WhatsApp. In the previous, was it the last session? It's the one I had practicals. Yes. In last semester, I was inviting people through the WhatsApp, and it was hacked. And this person, whoever it was, hacked, and they knew the participants. They knew the names of those people. So they actually put them down, and what they would do is they would interrupt the class. So when I'm teaching, like now you can see I'm already sharing. So you'll just see somebody come and start dribbling or scribbling around my diagrams. Or when I say something, they put something and they start laughing. I would try to mute them and they would unmute themselves. If I kick them out, they would use somebody else's name and they would come back. So I really had my class interrupted and disturbed throughout the course because my credentials were put on WhatsApp. So one of the security things that I'm doing this time is all my credentials are on Blackboard, because Blackboard is protected by USIU. Nobody will hack. So do not put them on WhatsApp. Otherwise, I'll have another terrible time with the hackers. So if somebody is not able to access, kindly text me. Like now, somebody has just told me, I looked at my phone and I told them what to do. Text me, call me, connect with me. Alternatively, if you have somebody else in your class's number, connect with them direct. Do not go through WhatsApp to ask them. Okay? So I hope that one is clear.
Yes, bro.
So you are asking about stem cells and regeneration. Now, you'll find that when you're doing what is it, anatomy and embryology, you'll be told that the neural cells are some of the slowest growing cells, and then when they mature, they lose that ability to differentiate, and they become permanently like that. Now, if you damage those cells, and like you're saying, you try to look, initially they used to say, once you damage, you cannot have regeneration. But we have seen, and we'll come and in the next semester, we'll do another topic, which is talking of nerve neuroregeneration, and it will show you circumstances under which the nervous tissue and the neural cells regenerate. So before we used to say they don't, but nowadays we say they do. The question is at what rate and at what step and which ones. So whoever was asking about stem cells, even that is another option of treatment. It is being done and it is happening. But I will not go into the details now. I'll do it when we are looking at muscle and sensory physiology, which is Physiology 1332. Okay, so now I will not leave this slide if you don't let me continue. So let's save the questions now for last. If you have another question, you let me know after I introduce some of these things. So previously, I've been drawing you as a person as this big circle we call the unit, the organism. You have your skin, and separating your skin from the inside, you have on the outside is the external environment. It is whatever is not you, and it is outside your body. It is external environment. Whatever is inside here is usually surrounding individual cells. Whatever is surrounding the cells is inside. It's an environment, but it is internal environment. So it is internal environment like that. The other one is external environment. It's outside the body. Now, you'll ask why I'm talking about environments here. Because in this internal environment, we may have what we are calling now the circulatory system, which is a network of blood vessels like that. And these blood vessels are the ones which take food or whatever nutrients to this fluid that is surrounding the cells. Within this, we also have a fluid, and we also have some cells. So even these are fluids surrounding cells. So even this fluid is part of the internal environment, because you have red blood cells, you have white blood cells, and we have a fluid that is surrounding it. So that is part of the internal environment. So now I want to distinguish between external and internal. At times, extending from the external will have an inlet. And this inlet goes and forms a big tube and then exits. Now, this tube connects, you have the external environment here. The external environment invaginates into the body. So this is also part of the external environment. And you have this hollow tube, and it exits on the other side. So you find that stuff that goes in here will actually, you can flush it out to the other end without it penetrating the wall. For that reason, even whatever is in this tube is part of the external environment, and that tube is the digestive system. You can see at the mouth entry, there is a hollow tube. That hollow tube goes into the lumen of the esophagus, lumen of the digestive, or rather the stomach, lumen of the small and large intestines, and it exits in the anus. And so food stuff, which is not able to penetrate through the walls of the GIT, are only held in the lumen, and the lumen entry is continuous all the way to the exit. So whatever is in the lumen of the digestive tract is still a part of the external environment. Now, another system that has such an entry is the respiratory system. But the difference between the respiratory system and the digestive system, the entry point and the exit point is the same. So we have the mouth and the nose, and they open into some air passages. These air passages are continuous with the outside. So when you inhale and air is in the trachea, it is still in the lumen, it is still in the outer external environment. Once it goes into the bronchi, it is still part of the external environment. And this bronchi will branch and branch and branch, and finally, you'll find a balloon-like structure, which is the alveoli. As long as it is in the lumen of the alveoli, it is still part of the external environment. Why? It has not penetrated the wall of your body. So air comes in, external in the nose, external in the trachea, external in the bronchi, external in the bronchioles, all the way external in the alveoli. It is only when it penetrates the wall, then you can say it has entered this fluid, which is part of the internal environment. Now, the other two systems, which are continuous with the external environment, is the urinary system and the reproductive system. Now, the difference between these two is that they have no entry point. They only have an exit. So whatever you're producing in the body goes into the kidney and then produces urine, which settles in the bladder. The bladder lumen is continuous through the urethra into the external environment. So whatever is here is in contact with the external environment. Now, this is where you start thinking of those urinary infections, because when you have bacteria able to access through this lumen and they end up in the urinary bladder or around the urethra, then you have a urinary tract infection, UTI. And I'm telling you, the people who have experienced it, they know what it means to have a UTI. Now, on the other hand, the reproductive tract also has an exit without an entry. Why? Because whatever you are producing, gametes, blood, or whatever in the body, it will end up in the lumen of the uterus. From the lumen of the uterus, it is continuous through the cervix, the vagina, and outside into the external environment. So even this one is part of the external environment, and that's why you are told whatever you insert in the vagina, it's coming in with a lot of bacteria. If you do not take care, that bacteria can easily cause an infection in that area, because there is that direct contact to the external environment. So why am I insisting on this? Because we need stuff from the external environment to get into this internal environment. We need nutrients, we need air, oxygen to get into the internal environment. So how does it do that? Now you find that if you need air, it will have to utilize the respiratory system. Air can only go in as far as the alveoli and then go out. So something has to happen at the alveoli. Air has to pass through the walls of the alveoli so that they enter the blood circulatory system. So now You have one system, which is respiratory system. It cannot sufficiently or efficiently perform its function without the circulatory system. The two have to work together so that the circulatory system will take away the oxygen, deliver it to all these internal environments. The internal environment is in direct contact with the cells. So now the cells will take up the oxygen and they'll be able to carry out their metabolism. One of the waste products being carbon dioxide and water vapor, this has to be taken by, again, the circulatory system, moved from the circulatory system back to the lungs, and in the lungs, that gaseous waste has to be removed. And when it is removed, then it has to exit through the airways. Now you have seen the connection between the circulatory system and the respiratory system. Similarly, you can follow the same chart with the digestive system. It must have an interaction with the circulatory system. So somebody may ask, then what is the connection between the respiratory system and the digestive system? After all, I cannot see where the gas is passing to the digestive system. Now, that is the purpose of the digestive system. It will take up, it has a lot of blood vessels. And these blood vessels are providing all the cells of the digestive system. So whether you're in the mouth, you'll have some blood vessels. When you're in the esophagus, there are blood vessels connected to that. Now, these blood vessels are delivering the oxygen that was exchanged in the alveoli. So once it goes into circulation, it ends up in the digestive system. Similarly, it is connected to the muscular system. It will be delivered to the muscular system. So you'll ask, what is the connection between the muscular system and the kidneys? Muscle cells are metabolizing. They are breaking down fuel. They are releasing waste products. Some of that waste product is urea. That urea has to be removed from the muscles or else it will be toxic to them. So what does it do? It has to get into the circulatory system. That has to go to the kidneys, and the kidneys form urine, and you see that it is excreted in the urine. Now you have seen the connection between this and that. So what's the connection between the urinary system and the digestive system? Again, these cells of the kidney will require nutrients. Nutrients are being delivered again by the circulatory system. Similarly, apart from just the nutrients that are coming in there, you find that, sorry, it will also, the kidneys will also require the gas that is being delivered from the respiratory system, all coming through that. So the question is, what is the role now of the nervous system and the endocrine system? Because I've shown you how all these ones are connected. The immune system is all over. I have just mentioned it doesn't matter where we are talking about. It is all over. Endocrine system is scattered, and when it releases its products, they always enter circulatory system, and it is through that circulatory system that the product of the endocrine system are able to reach their targets and to cause an effect in a distantly placed target tissue. Nervous tissue, on the other hand, has a continuous network that is connecting all parts of the body. All those parts are connected and brought together into the integrating system, which happens to be the CNS. So the CNS is linking up all these different fibers that are connecting different parts of your body. And they are making you aware. When you feel pain in your finger, there is something going wrong. Your brain is informed, and it will send information to that finger to try and figure out what is the problem and how can it solve it. So you cannot talk of these systems in isolation. Of course, all of them are wrapped up together by the integumentary system, which is the skin. Like I mentioned before, get rid of the skin and you'll find that this internal environment fluid will easily evaporate. And as it evaporates, it will draw out fluid from the cells. And when it draws out fluid from the cells, you start becoming dehydrated. And with dehydration comes more complications which can lead to death. So you cannot discuss any system in isolation. All of them are integrated, they work together. So if you check the role of each system, what they are trying to do is to keep constancy of this internal environment. This internal environment must have the same amounts of nutrients constantly available to the cells. It must have the same amounts of oxygen constantly available to the cells. It must have the same amount of carbon dioxide exposure. Otherwise, if it becomes more, it is toxic. Urea exposure, creatinine exposure. If it is too much, it will become toxic. So the systems are working together to ensure that internal environment stays constant, or shall we say relatively constant. So what is that relative? When you talk of relative stability, we are talking of homeostasis, and I think that is the next topic that we are talking about. Internal environment, which I have described to you, homeostasis, and feedback mechanisms. Yes, Michelle.
Okay, so earlier you mentioned that the reproductive system can be taken out, and that's the only system in the body that can survive, like a human being can survive without, due to, like, we've seen experiences of hysterectomies and everything. So like, can you say that it's more of like a parasite system in the body because it takes but it does not give?
Now, if you are considering yourself as an individual unit, then it is parasiting. But without it, the species is dead. So the reproductive system looks at the bigger picture. These other systems are very selfish. They just look at that individual unit. To make sure the survival of that unit, those systems work together. However, if that unit is healthy and survive and needs to pass on its genes to the next generation, then it needs the reproductive system. It will be useless for you as a species to be very healthy, to have everything, and to live a perfect life. And then you die without passing those important good characteristics to an offspring so that they can propagate that species. So the reproductive system is totally necessary for the whole species as in general. And that's why we say we look at the bigger picture, not just the individual. So that's why it is not really a parasite, it is necessary. Now, the reason we say that you can survive without, in some cases, some individuals are very weak. If they are weak, you don't want to propagate those weak genes. That's where evolution and survival of the species comes in. We don't want to bring forth or to propagate so that they go on living the weak genes. So the reproductive system only works when the person is healthy. If you are not healthy, you find that it also affects your reproductive capability. And this is nature's way of eliminating your genes from the genetic pool to make sure that only the healthy ones are propagated. So the reproductive system also plays a role. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so now I have really described the internal environment. I can't go through that again. So let us look at the next slides. I think I might as well use PowerPoint. The slides. And we see what happens here. So the whole idea is to define the internal environment. Anybody having a problem with the internal environment the way I've described it? If not, I will not go through that one. So the next thing is to understand the importance of homeostasis. I have just told you the definition of homeostasis is trying to maintain a relatively constant internal environment. Then to look at the overall function of the three major components of the nervous system. You find that when we are looking at homeostasis, you cannot separate it from the nervous system or the endocrine system. These two work together to maintain that internal constancy, so that if you have too little nutrients, your body is being depleted of nutrients. You are using up more than you are supplying the cells. Then your whole organs in the whole unit needs to replenish the nutrients. How will you know how to replenish? This is where the nervous system comes in. The nervous system is the one that will detect, and it will be informed that you are lacking nutrients. And so what will the nervous system do? It will tell you that you are hungry, and you'll go looking for food so that you can replenish the nutrients. So without the nervous system, you will never even notice that you're hungry. Now, when you are full, it's the same nervous system that will tell you, now stop eating because you are full. First, use what you have in the body. Now, when it comes to any other part, when you have, for example, you are not providing enough oxygen, your pH starts to rise, or rather to lower, to decrease, because you have too much carbon dioxide. It's the same nervous system that will detect that the internal environment is not in its optimum condition. So what will it do? It will send information to the brain, tell the respiratory center, hey, we don't have enough oxygen. What will the respiratory center do? Send information to your chest muscles so that they increase the rate of breathing. And when they do that, they allow you to take in more oxygen and remove the excess carbon dioxide. That way, it will help restore the internal environment. For that reason, we must understand the role of the nervous system in trying to maintain that internal environment. Now, it is not all the time that internal environment is maintained by the nervous system. At times, the endocrine system plays a similar role. Okay, thank you. Whoever is reminding me about the content, I will do that. The other thing is that the endocrine system can perform a similar function as the nervous system. It will tell one part of the body that there is something wrong with the internal environment. It will cause the gland to secrete substances that will correct that deficiency or deficit. And these secretions will be circulated by the circulatory system. And once they reach their target tissue, they will restore the internal environment. So these two systems work together to connect the other system so that when they work all of them together, their main role is to maintain homeostasis. So why do we need two systems, communication systems, to restore that homeostasis? And this is where we start saying, compare the general functions of these two. One of them acts in a different manner from the other, and we'll see why. And then at the end, we are supposed to explain the mechanisms of feedback control. There is the feedback. Let me see what I have written here. Explain mechanism of negative feedback. In this, I think I should change this objective to explain the mechanism of biological control. Biological control will cater for negative feedback. I hope people are awake. I've been talking like a radio.
Yes, bro.
You are awake.
Yes,
we are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we are.
And the reason I said that, whenever you hear me say, I hope you're awake, it means I'm going to say something very important. So I want you to pay attention. The reason I say I should change this objective to explain the mechanisms of biological control. Biological control comes in 3 formats. One format is the negative feedback, and this negative feedback is the major one that maintains homeostasis. However, we also have another biological control known as positive. Wherever there is negative, there is usually positive. So there is a positive feedback control. Then number 3, we have something called a feed-forward regulation or biological control. So all those will be encompassed in this objective. Now, at times, these control systems fail. And when they fail, you upset homeostasis. When you upset homeostasis, that individual becomes sick. When they are sick, they need to be healed. You need to intervene. Either the body itself has to do something so that it heals itself, and when it heals itself, it will restore homeostasis. In some cases, it is unable to do that on its own. This is where you bring in medications so that there is medical intervention to restore homeostasis. So when you're looking at this lecture, you have to take all these objectives that I have mentioned into perspective. So what do we need to regulate? What is that internal environment or homeostasis that need to be regulated? Now, there are very many things in your body that you need to regulate. However, the major ones is, if you don't regulate temperature, it will take a short time, and you find that your temperature will either be too high or too low for your survival. Now, you'll find that when you are in the lab and you're using enzymes are those biological catalysts. Even when you're using catalysts which are not biological, you've done chemistry. You find that when you increase temperature, you usually increase the rate of reaction. So the rate of reaction keeps going up. However, it will reach a point where it is optimum, it reaches the peak. And what will happen is, if you increase the temperature further, you start destroying the biological proteins which make the enzyme. And so your rate of reactions will drop. And if you increase the rate at which it drops, that by the time you're hitting the maximum upper level of temperature, say for example, from 39, 40 degrees there, by the time you are hitting body temperature of 45, it will have dropped drastically. So when the rate of reactions reach optimum and then they drop, usually this part is fatal. Those proteins are denatured and the individual dies. So if you go to beyond temperatures of over 40, 42, 40, you are a dead person. If you lower the temperatures, and by the way, this is not external, I'm talking about internal temperature, that one that is surrounding the cells. If this one is lowered too much, again, you stop the biological reactions from occurring in your cells, and it will also lead to death. So these extreme temperatures will cause death. Therefore, there is a range within which you as an individual can survive. You will be uncomfortable, okay, but you'll still survive. However, there is that optimum temperature within which your body wants to stay. So when we are looking at homeostasis, we try to maintain this optimum part, that optimum part, not going extreme, not going extreme. We are not asking you to be in a survival mode. We are asking you to be in an existence mode where you are happily existing. Now, when it comes to blood pressure, again, if it is too low, it becomes harmful. Why? Because you do not have enough pressure to deliver the requirements to the individual cells. The pressure is too low. The cells are not receiving the nutrients they need to have. They're not receiving the oxygen in good time or quantity. And because that pressure again is too low, you are not taking away the waste products, and so they start accumulating and they start becoming toxic. So very low blood pressure is not good. Alternatively, when you have again a very high blood pressure, it's also not good. The blood is moving faster than it should. In so doing, it is not giving the cells enough time to take what it requires to draw from the tissues, from the blood. If it doesn't do that, it is not delivering again what it needs to deliver to the cells. It's not delivering in good time. You are creating too much pressure. Again, you may lead to damage of some organs without which you cannot survive. So again, high blood pressure is not so good. Glucose, the same. Too low, you don't have enough to fuel metabolism. Too high, you change osmolarity. Again, you start causing death of the cell. So you find that any component you mention, there is a drawback to being too low or too high. So among the things that we require to maintain at relatively stable or constant range, mainly are the temperature, pressure, glucose, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrient, hydrogen concentration, electrolytes. When you're talking of electrolytes, we are talking of the different ions, whether it is potassium, sodium, phosphates, chlorides, calcium, all those needs to be maintained within a given range. When they are too high in the internal environment, it becomes detrimental to the individual. So here, this diagram is very similar to the one I had shown you, but it clearly shows the internal versus the external. So the one I had shown you before was showing you the systems and how they work together. However, in this diagram, I like it because it shows you where it is possible to change a variable within a very big or wide range and without causing harm to the individual. So look at the external environment. It means if I were to draw a graph, let's look at temperature. Some people exist in the Arctic where we have negative temperatures. Here is 0, okay? In the poles, or in the polar regions, or even say even in the temperate regions in winter, temperatures can dip up to minus 40 degrees, and people are still walking in the streets. This temperature is freezing temperature, okay? But the people are still able to survive. You can have the same person who is in the Arctic region decides to go to the Sahara Desert, and the temperature can hit positive 45 degrees. At times it even goes higher. So this person is still able to survive. So the external temperature can go all the way to low, it can go all the way to high, and you find that you can have such fluctuations, and humans are able to survive within those fluctuations. Now, let me put a thermometer and try to measure the temperature inside your body. So there is that surface temperature, but then there is the temperature of those fluids that are circulating in your body. Now, this is usually very easy to do because remember those entry points I told you, like in the mouth, where we have a tube continuous like that, or rather it goes to the other end. If I insert a thermometer here, it will show me the temperature of this area. It will not show me the temperature of a hollow tube because the temperature inside the tube is similar to what is in the tissues here. So you'll find that in the medical field, they'll put a thermometer in your mouth. They can put, especially for children because they move around, they put them in the anus and they take that what they call the core temperature. Core temperature is inside the body. Now, with this core temperature, it usually gives also a range. You'll find that at one time, although the optimum, we say it should be 36.7, this core temperature can range. At times, you may find somebody with 36.1, with 36.0, and they are okay. They are still not feeling anything. It can go all the way to about 37, 37.1. So if you look at the range between 36 and 37, or let's say 35.9 to 37.1, there is still some fluctuation. It is still allowing that range to go up and down. However, can you see the upper limit and the lower limit of this internal temperature is so different from the one in the external environment. So we are talking of from minus 40 to plus 40. That is about a range of 480 degrees within which you're able to survive. Now look at this one, 36 to say 37, a difference of 1 degree centigrade, so that it comes in points. Now go into the cell, and if you can be able to measure the temperature of the cell inside, you find that this one is relatively about the same. It hardly changes. So the range here is minimal. The range surrounding the cell is slightly more, but the range outside the body is massive. That's the difference between internal environment, external. You can change the external environment. You can minimally change the internal environment, but you hardly change the intracellular environment. Now, I think I had mentioned this one before. It's just a repeat of what I have said, that when you alter the internal environment, it can be either due to a physiological change, which is normal, or it can be due to an external influence. When you have external influence, then you have microbes or viruses which may cause an infection, but at the same time, you can have a pathophysiological change, whereby it is not this bacterial or viral change, but it is something that has happened inside your body that is causing a change in that internal environment. I think I elaborated that in the last lecture. So there are those biological controls that are designed to help the body in maintaining homeostasis. And when you fail in maintaining homeostasis, that's when you end up having the medical intervention. Any questions so far? So this slide gives you the definition. This slide sort of captures some of the things I discussed in the first slide of today's lecture, showing you the interrelationship between all these systems. So I will not go through that again.
Question.
Yes.
Can we assume that inability to regulate some homeostasis mechanism in a body is hereditary? Example, like people who have members in their family who suffer from high blood pressure, which I believe is a lack of homeostasis, like regulation of the blood pressure, is like if we have members in the family who have that disease, it's like most of the people are going to have it in the same family. So is it related to hereditary diseases? I'm not sure if you're getting my question, but
yes, I'm getting your question, because
okay.
you as an individual, you have failed to maintain homeostasis. But when you go to hospital, they start asking you, do you have a relative who has the same condition, diabetes or high blood pressure? So those people also failed to maintain their homeostasis. So you're asking, what is the connection? Can it
Yeah.
be genetically related?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
when it comes to the genes give instructions to your body what to do. They're the ones which will tell you how your heart will develop. And when your heart develops, it will beat in a certain way. It will be able to generate a given pressure in your body. This is the baseline is coming from the genes. So if there was a defect, something small that happened, and that system is not able to do that, you find that that gene will have been passed on to somebody in your, or maybe to the offspring. I'll give a good example of diabetes. You find that with diabetes, especially, let's talk about not the primary. I hope you know that we have two types of diabetes. We have the primary one, which you are born with a problem, and this is the one that is found in children. You find that they were not able to produce insulin, and therefore they are not able to regulate their sugars. Or maybe they are producing insulin, it is defective. Then that is congenital. It's something that comes with the child. However, there is this other diabetes where people are always being asked whether you had a family member. Now, this is the one that we call type 2 diabetes, whereby it develops later in life. Now, with this, it means your cells can tolerate sugar to a certain extent. And then beyond that, they are not able to tolerate that sugar. So if it was receptors that are working with insulin, the receptors may become tired at one time. The rate at which they become tired may be different from one individual to the other. But remember, receptors are proteins. Proteins are being produced by instructions from the genes. So if a family member produced a gene for a protein that is able to get tired faster than the other, it means that even in their offspring, they are most likely to suffer, to encounter the same problem. The only way maybe you can change the situation is when you change the lifestyle. So genetically, they have that inherent possibility of becoming diabetic, but because you have changed the environment. So If you expose them to the same amount of sugar your parents were doing, you become diabetic. But if you change the amount of sugars you expose them, then in that case, you will last longer. That's why you are told change your lifestyle, and you find that those conditions that you are predisposed to will be altered. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Kosana, I can't receive
Okay.
it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my question might sound a little bit fictional, but like it's just like a general observation, right?
Yes.
Can like there are certain organisms that can control their own, that can actively control their own homeostasis, right?
Okay.
So to a certain extent, like for example, I can try maybe go underwater and try to like take a long time, underwater, stuff like that, hold my breath, right?
Mhm.
Obviously I can't control my homeostasis to that certain point, but is it possible, like maybe as evolution goes on, to gain the ability to somehow actively try to control our own homeostasis? Like for example, you said that reproduction, like nature as a way of culling those genes that are not beneficial to the society, something like that, like as it goes on.
Yeah, but remember, evolution takes a very, very long time. What you're trying to say is you'll evolve that gene so that instead of, okay, if I can survive without oxygen for 4 minutes, by slowly changing my fitness, I might be able to move it from 4 minutes to being able to survive for 6 minutes. And so the human species will now be able to survive without oxygen. That will take a very, very long time. For you as an individual, you can change. For you as an individual, you can make yourself fit. You will adapt. And even that adaptation is a slow development. For instance, if you're giving that issue of breathing, you can stay underwater. You'll find that the first day, you can only last for a few minutes. Then, if you continue trying to practice, you're able to add a few seconds. And with more practice, you add more and more. With time, you'll see that after a month, a year, the point at which you can stay underwater is way longer than when you started at the beginning. That is a gradual change. It's an adaptation for that individual. But that doesn't mean that now you'll be able to pass those genes, because that is a characteristic you've changed for yourself. I think I'll take all the questions together so that I'll answer them at the same time. There's Nicholas and there's somebody else who put down their hand. Who is it? Kindly ask the questions now so that I answer all of them at the same time. Nicholas, let's hear what you say.
My question is, why is low blood pressure more dangerous than high blood pressure? Thank you.
Why is it
more dangerous than high blood pressure?
I think I just explained initially what is the problem with low blood pressure. With low blood pressure, now I'll give you a very, like a general example like that. Let's say you have a hose pipe and it sinks in a depression like that. This hose pipe is delivering water from this end to the other end here, okay? At this pit, you have some holes. And this water is supposed to come, and when it hits here, it will deliver this water, say for example, to some plants here so that they can grow. Yeah. Now, when you put very low water pressure here, it's moving at a very, very slow. You have put very low pressure here. What will tend to happen is this water will come and there is not enough pressure to push it out here. So what will it do? It will settle here, isn't it? Are we together?
Yes.
Now, when it settles here, it will end up flooding your plant. Now, when you flood the plant, you might think that that is good. After all, you are giving the water plant, but excess of anything is too bad. So you'll have delivered a lot of water and there is no drainage here. And the plants will soak in water and will die. Okay? Now, imagine the same size of holes that you had. You start to increase the pressure. And as you increase the pressure, the water is not able to settle here. So that, assume that this water actually is also collecting on this other side and leaving. So we also have water that is coming, sitting here, and also collecting in this tube, also at a very low pressure. So the same pressure you apply here is the same pressure you apply here. So if there is low pressure here, and there is low pressure that is taking away the excess water, that water will soak here, it will sit there, and it will kill the plants. Now increase pressure here, and at the same time increase pressure here. What will happen is that now water will move faster, it will be able to move into the plants quickly, but at the same time, because the water is moving away here, it will drain into this takeaway draining tube. So what you are in essence doing, you are exchanging materials faster here. Water is able to pass here and drain, bring its nutrients taken up by the plants and drain to the other side. So that is the optimum situation. On the other hand, when the pressure is too high, it will not have time to leak out. So what you'll be doing is all the material will be coming sheer and passing before it is having time to leak out. At the same time, this one will also be coming and passing without having time to leak out. What we'll end up having is that these materials here, they'll be deficient of what they need to grow. But if there is any waste product, because there is this flow, it will be able to drain here and remove. Now, if you understand that concept I've given you, your blood vessel is delivering nutrients to your cells. If the pressure is too low, the one that is draining is not able to take up the components fast enough. You'll accumulate metabolic waste. And remember, metabolic waste is more toxic than deficiency of nutrients. So if it is toxic to the cells, they will end up dying. So low blood pressure is that harmful. High blood pressure, on the other hand, it will be taking away nutrients faster than it is able to perfuse or to move into the cells. But at the same time, because of that fast movement, it is also draining away the toxic waste. So you'll have a deficiency of nutrients, but you'll not have an accumulation of toxins. So with a high blood pressure, these cells can survive longer than if you had low blood pressure. You see the connection now?
Yes, Prof.
Okay.
That was very, I don't know, it was wow.
Pardon?
And I understood very well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So now we can move on to the next one, unless somebody has a question. So now, for us to understand homeostasis, let me see what time I have. Oh dear. I was hoping that I will break you into groups to do this part, but it looks like I may not have time for that. So I might as well teach. So I hope I was giving you a break in group so that you can sort of also participate. So there are those things that we, in homeostasis, you must have. in order for you to maintain those relatively stable conditions. First and foremost, you must be able to detect that there is a change in the environment. And remember, the environment we are talking about is mainly internal. You must be able to sense that that environment has changed. Number two, once you detect that change, you must take that information to another area that decides what to do with the change. That is the thinking part of your homeostatic mechanism. The thinking part will have to decide what to do and send information to the executing part. So when you're looking at homeostasis, you must have those parts in place. Those that will monitor and detect the change. And once they detect, they must take it to the information to the integrating center, which will have to decide what to do with that information. And number three, you must take the information to the executing center, which will make adjustments to that. Those are the three major components of homeostasis. However, they are broken down into individuals, further units. The major ones are those three, but they are then broken down further. So before I move on to the next slide, I like giving examples, analogies, something you relate to every day. So I don't know how many of you have managed to go to USIU campus. When you go to the campus, the first person you'll encounter is the soldier at the gate. And the soldier will want to know, you are different from the others. What do you want? So what the soldier will do, they may not make a decision whether to throw you out or not. They will send somebody to go to the main office, the administration office, and tell the administrators, I have this person at the gate. And this person could be harmful. Say, for example, I'll use the example of terrorists. So there are terrorists at the gates, and the soldiers have I would say the security men have detected that this is a hostile person, but they don't have the ability. They don't have the ability to send this person away. So they'll tell the administrators, hey, we have a hostile person here. So the administrators will see that the soldiers do not have the capability to eliminate the danger. So they will send some armed people, people who are well equipped, to the gate and tell those people to go away. You have seen the three arms. One, the detector, the one who senses, the one who sees the danger, the ones who have seen the environment has changed. Then they have to send information to the administrator who has to think what to do. And when they do that, the administrator will not come with the guns or with the bows and arrows. That is not their work. Their work is to send information to the ones who are well equipped to go to the gate and send those people away. So they send information now to the executors who will make the adjustment for the change. So what I had wanted you to do is to break into groups so that you can look at the individual components of homeostasis. What makes up that? I will not go through this slide. The concept of homeostasis, I've already talked about this. Yes. So I think because I don't have enough time to break you into groups to do that work, and I don't want to start the topic of body fluids because it's the next thing here. We'll be looking at body fluids and compartments. So what I will do is I will introduce to you what you are supposed to do with the components of homeostasis. So I have just said that initially we have the organs in here, and it detects there is a change here. And this information, it targets the center, the integrating center here. And once the information is taken there, it will take to the executing center here. And it will cause something to happen. So although I'll do this lecture in greater details after I do the body fluids, I wanted you to see the components. We have the sensors, we have those connectors. These are either the nerve fibers or the blood circulatory system that will connect the sensor to the integrating system. And then from the integrating system, we have those connectors that will connect you to muscles. Muscles and glands are usually the executors. So if you learn those components of homeostasis, then you go to number 1, control system of negative feedback. Number 2, control system of positive feedback. And then number 3, the feed forward mechanism. So I will want you to do those 3 on your own, so that when I come to do them in class, it won't be so complicated. So again, I will write it down here. Components of homeostasis. Indicate what they all are. So when you start talking of sensors, those are the sensory cells, sensory organs, all those things. And when you talk of connectors, you're talking of the nerve fibers, you're talking of the blood system. When you talk of the integrator, you know what they are. Yeah? Number 2, once you know the components, I need you to look at feedback mechanisms, whereby we look at negative and you compare it to positive and give examples, at least 3 examples for each, at least 3 examples of negative feedback and positive feedback. Then the next one is the feed forward mechanisms of biological control. So I think this is where I will start in the next lecture. In the next lecture, where we'll be looking at all those 3 components. But for now, I will introduce why I need to learn about the body fluids. Lillian, you have a question.
Yes, I do. So
yes.
I was wondering, like, according to my understanding of homeostasis, it's like it involves the use of the brain somewhere, somehow. Yeah. So I was wondering, in a baby, since its brain is still under development for those first days, how is it able to like efficiently like perform all these different activities like the homeostatic mechanisms and all that? Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that you are not in control of all your homeostasis. For instance, your blood pressure, are you in control of it?
Can
you control how much blood pressure you have?
I think to some extent you can.
How?
Let's say if you're exercising and all that, then
now,
you can also decide to rest.
Now, usually when you do that, you increase temperature, and because of the temperature increase, the brain, it is not you who will do it. It's the brain that will detect you have changed your internal environment. Why? Because in exercising, you're generating a lot of metabolic waste in your muscles, and therefore the internal environment will have changed, and it will inform the brain, and the brain is the one which will send this information to your heart, tell the heart to beat faster so that it takes away that waste. So what you're doing is not you changing. The only thing you're doing is changing the internal environment, and then your body system takes those changes. The same thing even in a small child. The child is not the one telling the body what to do. They will end up becoming too warm, and information goes to the brain. So the brain of the child is very well developed. It is developed to the extent that it can survive outside its mother's system. The only time it cannot do that is when it is in the uterus. Then it depends on the mother to maintain its homeostasis. But when it is outside, that brain is well developed to know that the change is not good for the child. Okay, Lillian, you can change activity that will change internal environment. Once you change internal environment, your body system kicks in.
Okay, what was teasing me was the fact that, okay, I read somewhere that the brain, okay, when a baby is born, for those first days, the growth will be a bit stunted. And one of the reasons is because the brain is still like developing, like it's developing gradually so that it like controls all the other activities in the body. So I'm wondering, so as it's developing, like during that process, what helps it to like perform the other functions during that?
Homeostasis, it is able to do the basic requirements for the survival of that child. So it is well developed for that. What they mean about development of the child's brain, it is not fully functional. For instance, I'll give you something called a reflex, whereby there is that automatic response where you don't even have to think and you respond to it. Some of those reflexes in the child are not well developed. You can go and try and do some things to the child and they cannot respond. But if you do that to the adult, they can do it very easily. So what they mean by development is that they start learning, they are able to grow, the cells are still growing. They are still developing so that they can reach the adult stage. They have not yet fully developed. But for homeostasis, maintaining temperature, maintaining blood pressure, maintaining blood glucose, all those things the child can do. Because the brain has developed to the extent it can be able to survive outside the mother's system. But it has not fully developed like an adult's brain. So you are still growing. And that's why there's the mental development, there's the physical development. The child cells are still growing. The ability to think, to discern. Say, for instance, a child, when it's born and it has excess urine, it will just pass the urine without thinking. And that's why you have to keep changing the diapers. As the child develops, they train the brain to inhibit if they're in the wrong place. So that slowly with time, the child will learn that I want to go pee, but this is the wrong place. So they'll tell the mom, and the mom will take it where it should be. Then they are able to control and say, now is the time I pass the urine. So between that infant who was born, who could not think, and this one who has learned that there is a time to pee and not to pee, the brain has developed further. Do you see now what we are talking about state of development? So there was the initial development for survival, and then there is the advanced development. Lillian, are we together now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mustafa? Is it Mustafa? Yeah.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah.
I'm asking, what did you say about the three components of the homeostatic system? I only got one, the sensory. What are the other parts?
The one which senses, the one which thinks, and the one which executes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nkosana, Nabikanya.
Okay, I understand that most of our homeostasis is automated, it's beyond our control, right?
Yes.
But there are certain instances, like for example, let's say maybe someone is hurt really badly
Yeah.
and they're about to die. And here of these instances where people, it's like they're able to will themselves. You understand what I'm saying? Like to fight, like your reaction is your brain is like, you have to shut down your conscious, like lose consciousness. But some people to a certain extent, they're able to fight that. Understand my question?
Yes, I do. And I have
So,
actually observed cases whereby you hear somebody, they are critically ill. And actually, I had an experience of my friend whose father's blood pressure was extremely high. He was sort of in a semi-coma. But one of his sons was abroad, and they kept calling him so that he can come and talk to the dad before he dies. And it was very interesting because the day he landed, he went to the hospital. He talked to the dad. The dad was not even talking. He held his father's hand, and the presence of that son, the father knew that the son has come to see him. So they prayed, and when they went home, the father died. So I know it happens. You will yourself, you force yourself until a time when you just give in. Now, some of those things are hard to explain physiologically. Now, like I told you at the beginning, in physiology, we look at structure and relate it to function. And then when you go to hospital, we always say the doctor can do so much, but beyond that, it is beyond the doctor's control. Now, when it comes to willpower, when it comes to all those things, it is beyond the physical things that we can see and the functional component that we can observe. Now that becomes psychological. It is something you can't explain. And you've heard of also cases whereby physiologically everything, the doctor has done what they can. So when they look at your structures, they are very perfect. When they look at your chemistry or biochemistry, it is perfect. Yet, there's something wrong with you. They have tried to put life in you and you just die. So there are some things that you can't explain, and I think that is one of them, the willpower.
okay, thank you.
Anastasia?
Yeah, I'm trying to ask almost a similar question as Sebata. Like in movies, in some movies, you see like when someone is dying and the doctors use this shock to like make them get active again. Like, is that real? Does it happen really?
The one of the heart or what?
Yeah. Like they use these
They call
shocks to
resuscitation.
trigger. Yeah, those ones.
Now, you see what happens when it comes to the heart. And again, you'll understand this when you start doing systemic physiology. When it comes to the heart, it has a certain rhythm that you need to put this current at a certain order. And they follow a cycle. It will cause muscles to contract, push the blood, and then the excitation fades, the muscles relax, allow more blood to come in, excite the muscles, contract again. It's a cycle. There are some cells which we call the pacemaker cells, which create that cycle. They tell the heart when to contract, when not to contract. Now, at times, you find that something happens in the heart the muscle cells are not really talking to one another. So when this cell wants to contract, the other one is not. So that force of contraction of the whole unit as a whole is not there. And the force of the heart keeps fading. And you know what? The amount of blood coming into the heart is the one which will determine how much blood gets out. So if you don't have enough force to push it out, you will not have more blood coming in. You'll have less, and it's a cycle. And soon that heart will not be able to pump because even itself is not being given enough oxygen and all that. Then here comes these resuscitating machines. What they do is they give a big shock of current so that they stimulate all those cells at the same time. And when the cells become stimulated at the same time, the pacemakers, remember they're the ones which set the pace, they are all stimulated within the same time. So now when they lose their stimulation is at the same time and they start their cycle all over again. Now when they're able to cycle, the heart is able to cycle. So there is some physiology behind it that will allow a heart that had sort of given up on beating can be brought back to start beating again. Yes, it does happen. Lillian, you forgot to put your hand down. Okay, welcome if you understood. Lillian, you forgot to put your hand down. Now you have another question.
Oh, I forgot.
Okay, so I think I will not go because I can already see it's time. I will not go into details, but what I wanted to tell you, the parting shot, apart from the work that I had put down there on homeostasis, components of homeostasis, negative, positive, feedback, and feed forward. I want you to note that your body is not one big ocean. Instead, we have compartments. And these compartments, I always tell people, look at compartments like drawers. When you go to the cupboard, we usually have the first drawer there, and then you have the second one, and then you have the third one. Now, every time you want to get something different, you have to pull one drawer and not the other. So if you want to get your pair of socks, maybe they're in this drawer. If you want to get your shirts, they're in this drawer. So the body is also divided into such compartments. This we'll call the body fluid compartment. The first one we talked about is the one inside the cell. So if we put all the fluids that is required or is found inside the cell, it can fit in one drawer. And then all the fluid that is outside the cell can fit in these two drawers. Some of them are the fluids that are in the vessels, intravascular. Some of them are the ones that are in between the cells. These are interstitial. So these are the fluid compartments. So we are going to start learning about these compartments because one thing, these fluid compartments have characteristics. And the first one, they have a volume, a given volume. So we'll be looking at volumes. And number two, they have a given composition. So we look at the components in the different compartments. And that is the topic of the body fluids that will be done in our next lecture. So with this, I'll take attendance quickly. So kindly unmute yourselves. And let me see. So let me take attendance quickly. Mustafa, Abdinur,
Yes, present.
Anita, are you there?
Present.
Nicholas.
Present.
Anya.
Present.
Denver.
Present.
Okay. Lillian. Is it? No, Lydia Edosa.
Present.
Asna. Asna Hassan.
Present.
And Al Amin Hassan.
Present.
Samuel.
Present.
Joyce Karamba. Joyce not there. Madeleine
Present.
and Grace Tuku.
Present.
Princess. Is it Princess of, no, sorry, Prince. I think I have a princess in the house.
It's Prince. I'm present.
That's why I'm saying I'm sorry, it's Prince. I had said Princess. Prince,
It's
I
okay.
should underline Moses so that I don't make that error.
Okay.
Lillian,
Present.
Isaac,
Present.
Ivy,
Present.
Grace, Mugambi. Grace Mugambi, are you there? I thought I had seen.
Yeah, I am here.
Oh, Anastasia, please pay attention.
Present.
Angela,
Present.
Mary Murunga,
Present.
Charity Juguna,
Present.
Alice.
Present.
Which Alice?
Okay. There's Alice, Anim, Alice, or the word. This is Alice or the word.
Yes, present.
Or the word is Akelo.
Yes.
Okay, let me add that Akelo here. And Barbara
Present.
Patel.
Present.
Patience.
Present.
Sabata.
Present.
Cecilia.
Present.
Axila.
Present.
Lorraine.
Present.
Lucy Wainaina.
Present.
Joki.
Present.
Winnie.
Present.
Alice now Anin.
Present.
And Maria.
Present.
Did I miss anyone?
Yes, you did miss me.
Who
Michelle.
is that?
Michelle.
Michelle?
Yeah.
You are new?
Me too.
Michelle, you just joined?
I joined this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me too.
Michelle, we have quite a number of information, a lot of information you have missed. So please catch up. Philip Musila, you're also new?
Yes.
Okay.
Also me.
Yeah, raise your hand so that I see who you are. And that's it. That is Kush. That is
Yes.
Kush.
Yes.
You are new, so Kush Rana. I hope this is the name you are registered with.
Yes. Yes.
And then you are quite a number. Sumaya.
Yes.
What's the other name?
Shab.
Come again?
Wrote it on the chat.
Let me see. Where is the chart? You're taking me places. Okay. Sumaya. Hey, Sumaya, give me your other name. I don't have time to go looking around. I can't see it.
Okay, SHAABAN.
SHAA.
Yeah, BAN.
BAN. Yeah, Shaban. Okay. And the other person, Sumaya. And the next person is Kushrana. I have done that. Lillian Gichengo is also your first day. Lillian Gichengo.
Present.
It's also your first day. Okay. So who did I miss? You're 39. I think you're all there. So the people who I didn't have is, if I don't call your name, tell me. So I have Michelle Mogusu, Philip Musila, Kush Rana, Sumaya Shaban, Lillian Gishengo. Did I miss anyone? No. So you have a nice, lovely weekend.
You too.
I end the
Thank
session
you.
now.
You too.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Prof, I
Thank
had a
you.
question.
Okay, let's hear your question.
About that first, there's the first recording. You said you had an issue for posting it on Blackboard.
Yes.
When
Okay,
can
it's nice you reminded me. Now, you know, having techni-savvy people is very nice. In my other class, I have another class where somebody told me, actually she was the class rep, she told me, Madam, let me set up a class Gmail account, and then from there, we can have the whoever is having the recordings can upload it in the video YouTube account there. So I hope that we can do the same thing in this group. I am not technically savvy. Believe me, if you trust me, you'll be so lost. So can I task somebody to do that? Nicholas, you're the class rep.
Yes, madam.
Can
Please,
you do
I
that
have,
for me, please?
yeah, I have a YouTube account. So the last one, the previous one for this week, I shared it with them. So I'll be doing that always.
No, I don't. I also want to have access to it so that I see what you have. Eh?
Yeah, I can
So
share the link with you.
YouTube account or it's a class one?
Okay, I can do that, yeah.
Create for me a class one so that I don't go into your individual wonderful movies. Eh? Just create for me one for the class so that we just have physiology YouTube there. And you also share the link for the other ones so that people who come in later and they ask me for the notes, I can do that. Eh?
Okay.
And also I can upload the first, remember the first recording that you didn't have? So if you allow me to do that with that account, I can upload those ones.
Okay.
So Nicholas, keep in touch with me, yeah?
All right, Prof.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.